Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness video, where today I'm going to be using the Exploud and Wigglytuff lines to beat the game. And right away, I already know that these two are going to do fairly well together, if not excellent together, simply because they are both normal types. And while the normal type isn't an incredible type in this game, they get access to some of the best type coverage in the entire game, and these two Pokemon are no exception to that rule. So I already know that they're going to do very well in that department. And speaking of their moves, let's go ahead and move on to their stats and move pool. Starting with Wigglytuff, it has 90 HP, 30 attack, 15 defense, 40 special attack, 20 special defense, and 15 speed. It gets access to mostly normal moves through level up, however, it also gets the move rollout, which could be very handy for the final boss. And of course, through TM and Tutor, it gets access to an insane amount of type coverage, including fighting, water, ice, psychic, grass, electric, ghost, and fire. So it gets access to basically every single move it could ever want. However, there is a bit of a drawback, the first of which is, of course, it only gets access to 4 of those moves at any given time, and since they're all TM and Tutor moves, you only get access to 1 of them for a majority of those moves across the game. On top of that, it's not an especially strong physical or special attacker when it evolves into Wigglytuff, so the actual power of those moves may vary. Now moving on to Whismur, it has 64 HP, 51 attack, 23 defense, 51 special attack, 23 special defense, and 28 speed, making it fairly strong on both the physical and special side. However, its defenses aren't all that great, but its HP should make up for that. Now moving on to its moves, and just like Wigglytuff, it's mostly normal type moves, though it also gets the move Astonish, which will allow it to hit the one ghost type that could come before Wigglytuff gets the move rollout. And then moving on to its TM and Tutor moves, and it's a very similar story as it was for Wigglytuff, getting access to just about anything you want, though it doesn't get access to Thunder or Thunderbolt, and it's also missing a lot of the setup moves, including Light Screen and Safeguard, that Wigglytuff does have access to, though I'm not sure if that's really going to matter in this run. Anyway, with that, let's go ahead and finally move on to our Wigglytuff in particular, who has a gentle nature, raising its special defense but lowering its defense. And considering its terrible bulk, that's not the greatest nature, and because its only weakness is fighting, that could be even worse. And then it gets the Q-Charm ability, which causes contact moves that hit it to sometimes infatuate the opponent, and by level 10 it gets Sing, Charm, Defense Curl, and Pound. Now moving on to Whismur, it has a Hardened nature, which is a neutral nature, but that's perfectly fine. It gets the Soundproof ability that causes all sound moves to just not work on Whismur, which is kinda nice, and it starts with Pound and Uproar. So with that, let's go ahead and get right into it. Now the first thing I do is at level 11, Whismur gets the move Astonish, and because I really don't want to drag out the beginning with a Friendship evolution, I use the Eevee that I start with Friendship in order to start the run, which only takes a level or 2 to evolve. And now we have a Wigglytuff with 115 HP, 45 attack, 20 defense, 45 special attack, 25 special defense, and 20 speed, which I think only makes it slightly bulkier than Whismur and still a bit weaker and slower than it. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the battle against the old man. He leads with an Abra and a Horsey, and right away I lead with Whismur, and then I swap out Teddiursa for Jigglypuff. Abra goes for Fire Punch, not really doing too much to the Jigglypuff, but Leer does lower my physical defense, so there is a chance that could come back to hurt later. Both the Abra and Horsey take Jigglypuff down to 6 HP, and Horsey still isn't quite taken down, and Abra hasn't been hit a single time by Uproar, but the Pound does take it down very low. I decide to swap back in Teddiursa so Jigglypuff doesn't get taken down, and Uproar is able to take down Horsey, though unfortunately it didn't take down the Abra, which is definitely the bigger threat. And it really is just unfortunate that Uproar didn't hit it a single time, because it is just randomly picking between the two Pokemon. And because of that, Whismur does unfortunately get burnt, which means it's going to be dealing quite a bit less damage with Uproar. In fact, it's not doing very much to Shroomish whatsoever. And it's also set on a timer, slowly ticking down to when it's going to eventually faint. And I wish I could switch in Jigglypuff here, but with its health being so low, it's going to get taken down in probably one hit anyway. So I think I'm just going to have to hope that it crits. It does not, and Whismur goes down to burn. So I go ahead and send out Jigglypuff, and now I really have to hope that Pound is able to one-shot it from low yellow. But it actually outspeeds, goes for Absorb, and Pound gets a critical hit. Nice work, Jigglypuff. Anyway, with that, we're able to get through the other game, and now we move on to the Power Rangers, where today I decide to fight Brown, not for any particular reason. It's mostly just because I deal decent damage to both of his Pokemon, and he's only got 2 of them, so he should hopefully be the easiest of the 6 for these two. Anyway, with that being said, Let's go and move on to a little bit of rambling. If you are enjoying this video so far, consider liking, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Now, the Wigglytuff line is a line of Pokemon that I've used a few times in the past, and each time it does fairly well. However, it always kind of struggles near the end, so I'm really hoping that the Exploud line will be able to help support that with their better attacking stats. But the Exploud line is a line of Pokemon that I actually kind of like design-wise, but it's also a line of Pokemon that I've never used before. It's a very similar situation I had with the Claydol line, where I've always kind of wanted to use them, but never actually did. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform throughout this game. But anyway, with that, we defeat the Brown Trainer and also get the move Howl, which will be nice. At level 19, Jigglypuff gets the move Rollout, which I decide to teach over Defense Curl, and then I decide to go over to Mount Battle to go pick up the Water Pulse TM, which I decide to teach over Sing. And then at level 20, our little Whismur evolves into Loudred. Okay, maybe I take back what I said. Maybe I don't actually like the look of Loudred. But anyway, it has 84 HP, 71 attack, 43 defense, 71 special attack, 43 special defense, and 48 speed, giving it a flat 20 points across the board. Unfortunately, that doesn't really help its speed still being quite low, and its defenses not being incredible either, though that is still offset by its decent HP and solid attacking stats. Anyway, in the Cypher base, I run into another Jigglypuff. Hello there, other Jigglypuff. Goodbye, other Jigglypuff. And then I go into the battle against Lovrina. She leads with a Beautifly and a Love Disc, and right away I go for Rollout into the Beautifly and Pound into the Love Disc. Unfortunately, Pound's not doing as much damage as I was expecting, and Rollout doesn't one-shot the 4 times weak Beautifly, so I will have to finish it off with a Pound. And then out comes Roselia, another Rollout, dealing very little to Roselia as well. And so I go for Pound, which takes it down to low red. Unfortunately, that does get the opportunity to use Mega Drain, though luckily it decided not to go for Leech Seed, which would have been much worse. And then she sends out her final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Delcatty. Now at this point the rollouts are starting to stack up, so as long as it hits it will deal quite a bit of damage, and the crit absolutely guarantees that Delcatty goes down. I decide not to learn Double Slap, and then all that's left is the Love Disc, which Uproar takes down to low red, and Jigglypuff finishes off with another rollout. Anyway, now moving on, and of course you cannot have a Pokemon XD Gyarados video without the obligatory Mirror B. And with these two loud singers, I'm sure it's a perfect combination. And at the same time, let me pick up this Voltorb for the magnet item to raise electric type damage by 10%. Anyway, now at level 29, Loudred gets the move Stomp, which I teach over Pound, and Jigglypuff gets the move Rest, which I teach over Charm, before running into another Loudred. Hello there, other Loudred. Goodbye, other Loudred. Now moving on to the Railgun Tower, and I pick up my two favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect, and at the same time I'm also going to pick up the TM for Fire Blast because I don't really have a good way to hit Snaddle's Steel type, so this might end up helping. Anyway, I go ahead and teach Hidden Power to both of them right away, and so what did both of them get? Well, Wigglytuff got Hidden Power Poison at 56 base power. Not a good Hidden Power type, though it does give it at least something against grass types, and Exploud got Hidden Power Poison at 45 base power, which once again isn't all that great, so I'm glad I bought Fire Blast and taught that to Loudred right away. Anyway, with that, now we go ahead and move over to the Tutor Lady to go pick up the move Body Slam, which I decided to teach to Loudred over the move Stomp, and then at level 34, Jigglypuff also gets the move Body Slam, which I teach over Hidden Power, and then I pick up the Swinub for the Never Melt Ice item to raise Ice type damage by 10%, and then I go ahead and teach the Ice Beam TM to Loudred over Hidden Power. And now that I've gotten the move Body Slam, I go ahead and evolve Jigglypuff into a Wigglytuff. Unfortunately, it was a Moonstone evolution, and so I did just have to give myself a Moonstone since there isn't one in the game. But anyway, Wigglytuff has 140 HP, 70 attack, 45 defense, 75 special attack, 50 special defense, and 45 speed, giving it an exceptional amount of HP, unfortunately let down by its not great defensive stats and its terrible speed, though at least its attacking stats are decent. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the battle against Snaddle. He leads with a Lantern and a Quagsire, and right away I go for Body Slam into the Quagsire with both of my Pokemon, which is able to take down the Quagsire, and then he sends out his next Pokemon, a Shadow Lunatone. And luckily I do have Water Pulse, which should hopefully deal a decent amount of damage to it, and Water Pulse takes it down a half, and Ice Beam doesn't quite KO, and unfortunately it does outspeed both of my Pokemon, so the Shadow Wave might end up dealing a decent amount of damage, though we are fairly bulky, especially at this point in the game, and while it does deal a decent amount to Loudred, it does almost nothing to Wigglytuff. Anyway, I'm able to take it down, and then he sends out Cast Form, which takes an Ice Beam, taking it below half, and so I'm fairly certain I will be able to finish off the Cast Form with another Body Slam, so I go ahead and go for Body Slam into it, finishing it off, and then I also go for Body Slam into the Lantern, and once the Cast Form goes down, he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Matang. Unfortunately, Loudred does go down on this turn to a Shockwave, and Wigglytuff is nearing half health. And even though I was very critical of Wigglytuff in the stats screen, at this point in the game, it's actually still fairly strong, and so even if I get low, I can just go for Rest and heal up all my health, and then call on the following turn, which will just get rid of the sleep. However, because I was forced to rest, the Matang did get an attack boost, which could have been a bit more threatening than it actually was, but anyway, I take down Snettle and we move on. I go ahead and teach the Flamethrower TM over Fire Blast to Loudred, and then the Psychic TM to Wigglytuff over Rest, and then I run into another Loudred when I decide to do just a little bit of training. That way I can get my Loudred up to level 40 to finally evolve into Exploud, which has 104 HP, 91 attack, 63 defense, 91 special attack, 63 special defense, and 68 speed, which is yet another 20 base stats across the board. And while it does fall into a lot of the same trappings that Wigglytuff did, it at least decides to not go all in on HP and give a lot of its other stats a few of those points, most notably making it a bit faster as well as quite a bit more offensive. But anyway, with that, we now move into the battle against Gonzap, who leads with an Electrode and a Nuzleaf, and right away I go for Ice Beam and Psychic into the Electrode, knowing full well one of them is going to get hit by Fake Out, and I also don't want to risk being hit by the static ability that Electrode has. Unfortunately, Spark ends up paralyzing Wigglytuff anyway, but once the Electrode goes down to another Ice Beam, he then sends out his Vileplume. And Nuzleaf goes for Hyper Beam, really not doing too much damage. Another Ice Beam is able to take down the Vileplume, and then out comes Whiscash. Wigglytuff is able to get off a Body Slam, dealing half to the Whiscash and paralyzing. Another Body Slam finishes him off, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Skarmory. I go for a Body Slam into the Nuzleaf, which is able to take it down in a single hit, and then all that's left is that Skarmory, which I go for Flamethrower and Water Pulse. Flamethrower takes it down in a single hit, and now we move on. At the top of the pyramid, I get the TM for Earthquake, which I teach over Astonish, and then I go into the battle against Gorgon. He leads with a Lairon and a Celio, and right away I go for Body Slam into the Celio, dealing well over half, and Body Slam again to finish it off. He then sends out a Slowking, and I do the exact same strategy once again, which takes it down below Yellow, and another Body Slam finishes it off as well, and then he sends out Ursaring. Lairon goes for Iron Tail, really not doing too much to Wigglytuff. Another set of Body Slams, taking Ursaring down very low, and another Body Slam to finish it off. And then he sends out his first Shadow Pokemon, which is a Shadow Primeape. And it too will fall to 2 Body Slams. It's a very simple but effective strategy. The only real downside is if Lairon were to start stacking defense drops using Iron Tail, and while that could happen, it's also equally likely that Lairon just misses its Iron Tail. Anyway, now that it's just Lairon and the Hypno, I go for Earthquake to take down the Lairon, and a Body Slam to finish off the Hypno. So with that, we're now moving on to the last area of the game, and so far these two haven't had any major hiccups, other than a slight detour to go get Water Pulse at the beginning of the game. So let's go ahead and see how they do on Cidardark Isle. Now starting off with the first boss fight against Labrina, so this is the Gardevoir and a Gorbis, and right away I go for Body Slam, getting a crit, taking Gardevoir down in a single hit, which is very nice, and I go for Psychic into the Gorbis because it's not as specially defensive. Unfortunately, it freezes on the first Ice Beam. I go for Psychic into Roselia, and I'm really just hoping Exploud is able to defrost soon. Anyway, I go for a Body Slam into the Shadow Farfetch'd, and it isn't quite able to one-shot, so it is able to set up Shadow Sky, and the Fruity Pebbles will be doing a bit of extra damage to Exploud and negating Wigglytuff's leftovers, which probably shouldn't end up mattering. Go for a Body Slam to take down the Farfetch'd, and then she sends out our final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Altaria. Another Ice Beam, luckily no freeze once again, and Exploud has been frozen quite a long time, so it should probably thaw out pretty soon, right? Unfortunately not this turn, and so it does take quite a bit of damage from Altaria without being able to take it down, but I do take down the Gorbis with another Body Slam, and now Exploud is on the 4th turn of being frozen. Unfortunately, it's still frozen. If it just lands a single Ice Beam, Altaria would go down. Come on. Last turn to get it right. It's still frozen. Anyway, Body Slam does the job, and we beat Lavrina. Anyway, now moving on, and I really should have recorded it happening, but apparently Shadow Panic is a sound-based move, so Exploud is actually completely immune to Shadow Panic. Kind of interesting. But anyway, now moving on, and I run into yet another Exploud. Hello there, other Exploud. Goodbye, other Exploud. Anyway, with that, we move on to the top of the volcano, where we run into Snaddle once again. He leads with a Quagsire and a Matang, and right away I go for Ice Beam into Quagsire, dealing quite a bit of damage, and Body Slam finishes it off, and then he sends out his next Pokemon, which is a Scizor. Now, it is 4 times weak to Flamethrower, so that should hopefully take it down in a single hit, and it absolutely does. Then he sends out his next Pokemon, which is a Shadow Soul Rock, and hopefully the Water Pulse should take it down. It doesn't, but it does take it very low. I go for Ice Beam to finish it off, and then I go for a Body Slam into the next Pokemon, which is a Cast Form. And Body Slam does nearly all of its health, and so I will be able to take it down on the following turn. I go ahead and attack the Matang with Flamethrower, taking it down in a single hit, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Starmie. And I go for Body Slam, dealing over half to it. Flamethrower gets a crit, but doesn't really do much damage. Starmie goes for Shadow Break, not really doing much once again. I finish off the Starmie, and then all that's left is that Cast Form, which goes down. Now before the next fight, I go ahead and teach the move Thunderbolt over Water Pulse before going into the battle against Ardos, and he leads with a Shadow Swallow and Alakazam, and right away I go for Body Slam into the Alakazam and Thunderbolt into the Shadow Swallow. Unfortunately, on the first turn, Wigglytuff gets taken down to 50 HP. I am able to take down the Alakazam in a single hit, and I decide not to learn Rest and Sleep Talk. Then out comes Kingdra. Thunderbolt does take down the Swallow from half health, and then he sends out Heracross. And as long as Wigglytuff is able to attack, I'm pretty sure I can take down Heracross in a single hit. Body Slam doesn't quite take down the Kingdra, and Heracross actually survives. And unfortunately, I get taken down right after. And after another failed attempt, I decide to go ahead and teach Protect, which unfortunately has to go over one of the moves that I wanted to keep for the rest of the game. So in hindsight, I really should have taught it over the move Water Pulse and waited to teach Thunderbolt, because I'm almost certain I could have taken down the Swallow because it's just going for Shadow Half every time anyway. But here we are now on attempt number 3, and unfortunately I lost my best move against Snorlax. Oh, I guess that's a bit of spoilers. Ardos has Snorlax. Anyway, the Swallow goes for Shadow Half right away, and luckily Alakazam decides to target the protecting Wigglytuff. Then out comes the Kingdra, and I go for Thunderbolt and Body Slam into it to take it down in a single turn. And once it goes down, the Heracross comes out once again. Now, I do need to go for Protect this turn because the Swallow is going to go for Shadow Half, and I know that because Wigglytuff's health is extremely high still, and so it's able to have the HP of Heracross, allowing it to be taken down by a Flamethrower, and then he sends out his next Shadow Pokemon, which is a Shadow Electabuzz, which also goes for Shadow Half, though I guess I should have seen that coming, and I go for Earthquake because I wanted to take down the Electabuzz in case it didn't go for Shadow Half. I needed to take it down from full health, and I take down the Swallow with the Thunderbolt, and at this point, it's all just luck from the Snorlax. It's going for Shadow End, which is 60% accurate, and if it hits, it will take down one of my Pokemon. Unfortunately, it hits Exploud instead of the protecting Wigglytuff, and so it's all up to Wigglytuff with basically just special attacking moves. Luckily, it misses its next one, and so I'm able to finish it off with Thunderbolt and beat Ardos on the third attempt. Now moving on to Gorgon, and this time he leads with an Ursaring and a Slowking, and right away I go for Body Slam and Thunderbolt into the Slowking to take it down, and then he sends out Aggron. And because there's a chance Aggron could protect here, I decide to double into the Ursaring to take it down, though it decided not to, and he sends out his next Pokemon, which is a Walrein. Aggron instead decides to go for Iron Tail, which luckily does not lower the defense of Exploud. Go for Body Slam and Thunderbolt once again to take down the Walrein, and then he sends out his first Shadow Pokemon, which is a Shadow Poliwrath. Though it really shouldn't be all that threatening this time, I decide to go for Earthquake, which does take down Aggron in a single hit, and then I can go for Thunderbolt, which should hopefully finish off the Poliwrath. Luckily it does, and then all that's left is the Shadow Mr. Mime, which a Body Slam and Thunderbolt, or maybe just a Body Slam, will be able to take down. And now we move on to Eldis. He leads with a Shadow Manectric and Ninjask, and right away I go for Protect and Earthquake to take down the Manectric in a single hit. Unfortunately, it does outspeed, and it's able to set up Shadow Sky, which means that the Shadow Salamence coming out right now is going to be dealing a lot more damage. Now, something I've noticed in a lot of these runs, especially lately, is that whenever the Shadow Sky is active, Salamence usually goes for Shadow Hold on the first turn. However, so often I take down the Manectric before it's able to set it up that I never actually notice the behavior. So I'm not sure if it's just a 50-50 chance for it to go for it, or if I've just been getting lucky, but anyway, back to the battle. I take down the Salamence with an Ice Beam, and then I take down the Ninjask with Thunderbolt, and then he sends out his Flygon and Shadow Marowak, and I can take down the Shadow Marowak with a single Ice Beam, which is really nice. However, it was a bit unexpected, so just to be safe, I went ahead and went for Psychic, and while it doesn't really do much to Lapras, it also has the chance to lower its special defense, which it didn't do, but there was a chance that it would have worked out a bit better. Anyway, I go for Body Slam, taking it down to half, and a Thunderbolt, finishing off the Lapras, and then that just leaves the Flygon, which will absolutely go down to a single Ice Beam. So with that, we're able to beat Eldest on the first attempt, and now we move on to the big box legendary, Shadow Lugia. And right away, I go for Ice Beam and Thunderbolt. Lugia outspeeds, not actually dealing as much damage as I would have expected to Wigglytuff, and I'm able to hit back with another Thunderbolt, which takes it down to low red. Another Shadow Blast unfortunately gets a crit, taking Wigglytuff down, but another Ice Beam finishes it off, and now we move on to the final battle against Greevil. He leads with a Shadow Rhydon and Moltres, and right away I go for Ice Beam into Rhydon, which does take it down in a single hit, so that is great to know. Then out comes his Shadow Executor, and once again I go for Ice Beam into that, taking it down in a single hit. Then he sends out Tauros, and this is probably the first Pokemon it's not going to take down in a single hit. However, I go ahead and try it anyway, but I'm taken down by Tauros. So with that, we go in for a second attempt now, and I go for Ice Beam and Rollout right away. Ice Beam, I know for a fact, takes down the Rhydon, and then he sends out the Executor once again, and as long as the Rollout never misses, I should be able to completely destroy his team. The first Rollout is, of course, not all that strong, so it's not even doing half to Moltres, though the next one is going to double in power, so that should be a KO on Moltres. Okay, maybe not. It's very close, though. I decided to just go ahead and use Ice Beam to finish it off, because I'm pretty sure Articuno should be a one-shot now. Okay, maybe it's actually just very close, but once again, Exploud should be able to finish it off, and that'll bring out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Zapdos. But that one's not 4 times weak to rock, so that one's probably not going to go down to a single rollout. I should really stop making guesses on these. Anyway, all that's left is the Tauros now, and at this point I can just go for Flamethrower and hopefully not miss the last rollout, and that should be the end of the battle. So with that, we beat Greevil on the second attempt. So how well did this pairing do? Well, they beat the game at a time of 9 hours, 23 minutes, and 30 seconds, with Exploud being level 59 and Wigglytuff being level 62, and throughout the game, they accrued 8 losses, 3 of those to bosses, and 5 of those to random trainers. But before we move on, I do need to check just one last thing, and that is the Exploud line gets a signature move in Hyper Voice, so I want to see what the animation is. And it's actually kind of underwhelming. It's just the normal screaming particles, and not much more. Okay, well anyway. So I'd say overall, it's a great pairing throughout the game, and maybe I was a bit too harsh on the stats of these two, because I really didn't expect the bulk of Wigglytuff to really shine through. And it really shouldn't be that surprising because I have used it a few times in the past, I just don't remember it taking hits nearly as well as it did in this run. But anyway, I think that Exploud is a very good partner for it because it's able to dish out some of the offensive pressure that Wigglytuff just cannot, and in a lot of instances neither of them can take down some of the bulkier threats. So together they're able to finish those off relatively easily with their strong stab normal moves or just their great type coverage. On top of that, while neither of them are exceptionally fast, Exploud is able to outspeed some of the things that would pose a threat to Wigglytuff and take them down quickly. So I think that overall it's a fairly good team combination. And we can actually see how much better it does because Wigglytuff was paired with Clefable last time and those ended up in the A tier. So it's definitely an improvement overall. I think the only real downsides are, of course, the speed stats, which even though I said were fine, they're still not great and a lot of Pokemon are able to outspeed. And the other thing is that their pre-evolutions really aren't all that strong. Igglybuff and Jigglypuff are honestly just terrible. And Whismur is alright in the early game, and I'm glad it evolves right around the time it needs to, because Loudred is a good step up from that. However, it does start to fall off a bit, and having to wait until level 40 isn't the best, but I really can't complain too much because they both did exceptionally well in this run. So if you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and bye!